everyone, this is Gina from Fibers and Design, and in this tutorial I'll show you how to weave with felting yarn in order to create your own woven felt. Let's get started.
What I like so much about this material is the structure that it keeps. It's very strong, which makes it an ideal material to use for making a pouch or other creative structures.
So this is the first time that I ever tried felting, and I really enjoyed the process. But in order for me to really understand or to get a better idea about using felting yarns, there were 3 resources that I used, and I wanted to leave those down in the link below. And you can also find it on the Fibers and Design website in the resource section of the blog post. The first is from a creator from Amicus Goods in the post Weaving and Felting a Wool Sheet, and I found that link in YouTube. There's another one from Duo Fibers Work, and the title is How to Hand Felt Your Knits. And the last one is from Kim Knits Tutorials, and it's an uncut how to felt your knitting by hand. In that tutorial, or the last 2 tutorials, are from actual knitwear, and the first one, Amicus Goods, is from actual weaving a wool sheet. Although the last 2 resources is more about knitting, you can still use those resources to show you the actual felting process. So I took some of these ideas and used it for this tutorial.
To get started, you'll need some felting yarn. Now, felting yarn is a different type of yarn because when you wash it, it's going to shrink. So it's usually made of a wool. And I'm going to use this for the weft. And for the warp, I'm going to be using this cotton yarn, but I would probably recommend using this felting yarn for both the weft and the warp. Once you have all your yarns ready, then you can dress the loom and create your design. But something to keep in mind is that the design is going to shrink. This was originally 7 inches wide, and then finally when it shrunk, it went to 4 inches. So you want to keep that in mind when you're creating your design. So once the design is finished, I just cut it off of the loom, and then now I'm just checking the structure to see if there's really anything different, and there's not. It's the same as before when you're weaving other things. So the next step, of course, is to send the ends back into the piece, so including the warp and the weft. We want to get those loose edges or ends back in so that they don't come apart when we are agitating the pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. So just like regular, going to go over to the next warp hole or entrance and then just send the warp back in. So here I don't want to go in too many weft rows, just a few is enough. You just want to make sure that the yarn's going to be secured. At the end, for the next process we're going to do, you really want to make sure that those yarns stay in there. So I'm just going through each of these and I'm checking on both sides to make sure that the weft yarn, the warp yarns aren't coming through the other side. I want to just hide them away between those weft yarns. Okay, so all the ends are put away. That looks really great. And I'm just trying to make sure that that cotton yarn is just well hidden in there too. And then now I'm going to go and tuck in those weft yarns. So the key thing here is that with the weft yarns, you want to make sure that they stay, of course, secured, but you don't want to put too much stress or pressure on that row. So what I'm doing here is I'm just feeding the weft through the tapestry needle, and I'm just securing the base of that yarn with my thumb, just to make sure that I'm not pulling it too hard and pull it down too much, ruining the pattern. So as you can see here, it's just nice and flat and it's not messing up the pattern. So I'm going to do this to all of the pieces, and I want to make sure that those weft yarns gets tucked in as much as possible. So here, usually I don't care too much with the tapestry, but here I'm trying to get as close as I can to cut off as many ends as possible. And you can see here I'm just wiggling the piece by the opening to kind of just get it to hide in there. At the end, we're going to be taking with water and we're going to be doing a lot of rubbing with this piece. So I want to just make sure that everything is secure. Now, similar to those weft yarns, with the warp yarns here, I want to get that very close cut to the base of these yarns because again, we're going to be rubbing, and so I'm going to just cut here at the base as close as I can without cutting more extra of the warp or the weft. And again, I'm just wiggling it here so that yarn just gets stuck in there. And I'm going to continue this all the way into the end until I have all the weft yarns cut, and I will check over the piece to make sure everything is hidden away. Oh, if only it was this fast. Okay, so I was able to finish it up here, and now it's time to get to the next step, to prepare the water. For the felting process, you need warm water to kind of hot water, but water that you can stand to hold and to work in. So don't make it too hot. And once you have the water ready, you're going to also need some type of dish detergent. And, maybe a little black tea and milk. But, that's only if you have time. But I guess there's always time. Here I'm just doing one final check to make sure all the ends are secured and ready. And as you can see, all of the ends are gone and they're all hidden inside of the weaving. So it's perfect and ready to go. With the water here, I'm just going to check it again just to make sure that it's warm enough or hot enough. I think that I thought the water wasn't super hot, so I decided just to put in a little bit more water from the tea in and just to warm it up a little bit more. But again, don't overheat it because you're going to be working in this water. An alternative is if that you have sensitive hands or you are kind of trying to protect your skin and nails like I am, then you can just put on some rubber gloves. And that's what I did for most of the time, or some of the time really. And then I added the soap detergent and the piece. So from here, this is all about creating agitation in the piece. So here, my piece that I wove is not so big, and so I didn't use a huge bucket or container. So I just want to get it really soapy and wet and kind of just start working and rubbing. The goal with during this felting process is to lose this definition of the yarns. So if you can still see the rows of the weft yarns, then you want to get rid of them. And once they're gone, then the felting process is over. So there's various levels and degrees of felting and losing this definition. And I found that in this process, it took quite a while to get rid of this definition. So you just have to keep rubbing and letting it sit in the soap and the water, and eventually after lots of friction between the yarns and the soap and the water, then it will disappear. I also started using a spatula before to kind of give it a little bit more friction in the water. Did it help some? Maybe. But yeah, here you can actually start to see that the form is changing and you can start seeing less definition. And I could start to feel in my hand a difference in the material. It actually feels like it's hardening a bit more. And then you feel like, oh yeah, it's on. But there was still a lot of work to do and get done. So yep, I just kept going and going. So I'm not gonna even lie, I was working on this piece, and it's a small piece, and I was working on this for at least a half an hour, 45 minutes before I really started to see some results. So here you can still see some definition, and as you guys saw at the beginning of the tutorial, I said that I'm using this cotton yarn. So I think that's why you can see a lot more vertical lines in this. Of course, you can still see the definition of the weft yarns, but you can also see a lot of those vertical lines, and I think that's because of the cotton. The cotton didn't really, I don't want to say dissolve, but that's kind of what it feels like. It kind of, the other yarns dissolved and the cotton yarn just stayed together. I still think that I can get some more of that definition out of there, so I just took the piece out of the bucket and I just put on a TV show, movie, and then I started rubbing it, and then I would put it back in the bucket, and then until it started to really lose that definition. So I just kept going from the bucket to my chair, started thinking of new ideas for the project. Yeah, so I kept doing that until I was finally satisfied with it, and I decided to just go ahead and rinse it out with some water. And I want to really just work out that soap that was in there. So I hand rinsed it, and then I put it in a bucket, rinsed it out again, and I just want to make sure the soap is out of there. Once I finish taking the soap out, I wring it out. Now, to quicken the drying process, I decided to put it on a towel and roll it up just to get that excess water out of it. And then once I gave it a few push downs, then I just unrolled it and then put it on a slab of newspaper and put it in a place to dry. And there it is. Overnight, I just let it dry, and it's still a little wet, but overall, I'm really happy with the results. The definitions of the weft yarns are gone, and I think it looks really great. One of the key things I was trying to test out with this design was looking at the shape of this triangle. As you can see, after it was felted, the definition of the yarns and using the weft interlocking method, you can see that there's no exact clear definition of this shape. And I think that was very interesting. Even the definitions between this green and the pink sections aren't so clear and defined. So it does make for a very interesting design, and I'm pretty happy with the results. Now, the last thing was it's still a very organic shape, so I wanted to straighten it out, and so I decided that 11 centimeters would be a nice shape or size to it. So I just took some chalk and to measure it out the edges and to see what part I will cut it out. And yeah, it's a very stiff and structured material, so it was very easy to cut and mark it. And I think it'll be a really nice material to experiment more with later. So it's a interesting material because you wove it, but now it's a solid form. But I think you can still get a lot of variety with it. I also found the felt to be really easy to cut through, and I found these leftover pieces to be really interesting as well as these edges. You can see that the cotton yarns pop out because they didn't quote unquote dissolve or form or felt really with the other yarns. So I found that to be really beautiful in some ways, like the mixture of these two materials. But I found that they worked really well together. But I think in the next project, I will try to use all felting yarn in the weaving process, including in the warp and in the weft. So once you've shaped up the edges, then it's ready for you to use and design as you like. Although these two pieces are made of totally different materials, I still wanted to just show that side-by-side comparison of when the material has the woven definition on the left, but on the right with this felted material, it is almost completely gone.
In the beginning of the video, I showed you an idea that I had for creating a cell phone case or cell phone holder because this material is very strong. So maybe I could felt one more piece like this with a similar size, or I could just weave another side with some cotton yarn or a different material and sew the edges together. The possibilities are endless. Hopefully in a future video I can show you a project that I decide to create with this piece or with another felted piece. I hope that this tutorial was helpful for you and answered your questions about felting, or at least the basics. There's also a written tutorial on the Fibers and Design website, and there's also a link down below that you can access if you'd like to read it. If you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments section. And if it was helpful, then please like and subscribe for future weaving tutorials. Thank you so very much for watching, and please take care. Thank you again, and see you next time. Bye.